The Owlman of Mornan. Avian humanoid hybrids are common in folklore all across the world. They can be found in Egyptian, Hindu, Greek, and Japanese cultures, to name a few. Most legends pass down through generations, gradually morphing into something entirely different to the original tale. However, that is not the case with the Owlman of Mornan, a relatively new tale of a terrifying bird that inhabits the village of Nornan Smith near Falmouth in Cornwall. In 1926, a local newspaper reported that two boys had been chased by what was described as a very large and ferocious bird. The terrified boys managed to escape and took cover behind a large steel grating. The boys later drew what they saw. Initially, the sighting was put down to an overactive imagination. That was until several more sightings of the creature emerged, of a half-man, half-bird creature that became known as the Owlman of Mornan. Fast forward 50 years to April 1976, two young girls reported seeing an abnormally large bird resembling a giant owl flying over the tower of the 13th century parish church in Nornan Smith. The girls had been camping in the woods nearby when they heard a strange hissing sound. They described the huge bird as having red eyes and strange claws shaped like blacksmith's pincers. This is the picture one of the girls drew of what she saw. The girls, who were on holiday with their families, were so traumatized by their experience that they cut their holiday short, and the family returned to their home in Preston, Lancashire. 2 years later, there was a similar sighting when two witnesses came forward and described an abnormally large silver-grey coloured bird. At first they thought it was someone dressed up, but soon realised it wasn't when the creature took off and flew away, leaving behind a strange static noise that seemed to engulf the trees. There was a further sighting in 1989, and then in 1995, an American tourist came face to face with the Owlman, that she described as being at least 5 feet tall with huge wings and large claws. She was so disturbed by the sighting that she sent this letter to a local newspaper.
Dear Sir, I am a student of marine biology at the Field Museum, Chicago, on the last day of a summer vacation in England. Last Sunday evening I had a most unique and frightening experience in the wooded area near the old church at Mornan, Cornwall. I experienced what I can only describe as a vision from hell. The time was 15 minutes after 9, more or less, and I was walking along a narrow track through the trees. I was halted in my tracks when I saw a monstrous birdman thing. It was the size of a man with a ghastly face, a wide mouth, glowing eyes, and pointed ears. It had huge clawed wings and was covered in feathers of silver-gray color. The thing had long bird legs which terminated in large black claws. It saw me and rose, floating towards me. I just screamed, then turned and ran for my life. The whole experience was totally irrational and dreamlike. Friends tell me that there is a tradition of a phantom owlman in that district. Now I know why. I have seen the phantom myself. Please don't publish my real name and address. This could adversely affect my career. Now I have to rethink my worldview entirely. Yours very sincerely, Scared Eyewitness.
After this sighting, things went quiet for a bit, although there were other strange occurrences in Mornan, with people witnessing glowing orbs in the night sky. Then in 2009, the Owlman made another appearance when a 12-year-old girl spotted him again in the vicinity of Mornan Church. The girl described the creature exactly as the other witnesses had. Some have suggested that what is being seen is an escaped great grey owl, which can have a wingspan of nearly 2 meters and can stand at around 5.5 foot tall. However, it is unlikely the same grey owl would have survived for that long, so the theory has been dismissed.
The Welsh werewolf. Wales is not the first place you think of when talking about werewolves, but it seems it's had its fair share of stories about strange wolf-like creatures. The first recorded event happened one night in 1790. At the time, the moon had acquired a strange red hue, which the locals believed to be a bad sign, an omen of impending evil. The moon lit the way as a stagecoach travelled between Denbigh and Wrexham, when its journey was halted when an enormous black beast lunged at the coach from the shadows, and attacked the horses. It tore one of them to shreds, and the other broke free and galloped off into the darkness, pursued by the wolf-like beast. Little more than a year later, a farmer from the Gresford area discovered tracks in the snow. But these were no ordinary tracks. They were huge and could only have been produced by an enormous creature. Fearing for his safety, the farmer called on a local blacksmith to follow the tracks with him, which led them to a neighbouring farm. There, they were confronted with total carnage. The snow was a shade of deep red, and not a single animal had survived. They had all been torn to shreds. Cattle, sheep, and even the farmer's sheepdog. The men approached the farmhouse, fearing the worst, and to their relief the farmer appeared, unharmed, although he had barricaded himself in. He told them how he had watched in horror as an enormous black wolf-like animal had set upon his animals, and then chased him before he managed to lock himself in the house. The beast foamed at the mouth as it reared up on the windows, trying to get in. The locals believed at the time that only a werewolf could have inflicted such damage to livestock, and they organised a hunt. But despite covering plenty of tracks, no werewolf was found. 7 years later, the beast struck again. The two men witnessed the chilling silhouette of the creature against the rising. It lifted its head and let out a howl that struck fear into their hearts. The werewolf had returned. Scared for their lives, the two men took shelter in a nearby inn. The next day, in a wood about 5 miles from the inn, the bodies of two vagrants were found. They had been mutilated beyond belief and appeared to have been slashed to a virtual pulp by something with blade-like claws. Both their heads were missing and appeared to have been ripped from their bodies. One head was later found, minus its face and ears. Shortly after the incident, one of the local ministers received a strange letter. The writer claimed that the two men had been killed by a werewolf that had been stalking the area for more than 100 years, and that to avoid a similar fate befalling anyone else, he should paint crosses on each door in the village. He claimed that the werewolf embodied the spirit of an evil warlock who had been burnt at the stake in the 1400s by the ancestors of the village folk. The horrific killing sprees finally deceased, and it seemed that the reign of the Welsh werewolf was over, at least for now. Dogman. YouTube channel The Cumbrian Outdoors is a channel dedicated to the activities of a hunter in Montgomery County, Tennessee. The creator and narrator makes the videos to share his experience and knowledge of hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, and outdoor equipment. And most of his videos are just that. However, in March 2022, he posted a video titled Strange Howling in the Tennessee Woods. At the start of the video, he explains that he has been reluctant to post it, but wanted to see if his viewers had experienced the same thing as he had. He went on to say that he was out squirrel hunting the previous weekend when he heard a strange howling that in all his years as an outdoorsman had never heard before. At first he thought it may be coyotes, but noted that it didn't seem like their usual call. As someone who has spent most of his life outdoors, he knew all the sounds of the forest, naming specific birds and creatures that he was familiar with, but this sound had baffled him. Initially he recorded the howling on his phone, although the quality isn't great. Take a listen.
You're out here in the woods and everything gets quiet. You hear all kinds of weird noises. I'll tell you what, it sounds like it moved. There, you hear it. Don't know what in the world that is.
Then, as it got darker, he heard the sound again and recorded it on his video camera. Take a listen.
Well, folks, whatever that is, it was howling a while ago. It started up again. I don't know what it is. Sounds like there's some coyotes, but there's something else.
He seemed genuinely concerned about what was making the screeching sound and asked for help in the comments, but probably wasn't expecting some of the answers he got, and some urged him to properly protect himself. It seemed that most of the commenters believed it to be the sound of Dogman, a cryptid described as a huge blue-eyed bipedal canine-like animal with the torso of a man, and a fearsome howl that sounds like a human scream, originally witnessed in Michigan. Take another listen.
I don't know what it is. Sounds like there's some coyotes, but there's something else.
Is O'Hare International Airport the new home of the Mothman? On November 26, 2019, a truck driver stopped to pick up a load at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, where he claims he witnessed a person with wings around 7 feet tall standing by a fence. He later reported the sighting to UFO Clearinghouse, an online source for odd encounters that describes itself as a portal for the truth. This is how he described the encounter.
I was at the airport picking up a load of Nippon. I was already backed into a dock and was standing away from the truck smoking a cigarette while they loaded my truck. I was looking towards the runways, in the direction of the tunnel, and that is when I noticed something that looked like a large bird standing just outside of the fence by the parking lot. It was not hard to miss because 2 street lamps were nearby. It looked like a person with wings that was stretched out and flapping. It was walking away from the fence towards the open field and then began to flap its wings and disappeared.
Further investigations with the driver revealed the creature had a wingspan of approximately 6 feet and looked like a solid black demon or a goblin that walked with a gait like a bird. It was also discovered that the truck driver had seen a similar creature as a child in Mexico that he witnessed circling an open field, making loud screeching noises before disappearing into the surrounding forest. Since the airport sighting, over a dozen more reports came in, not just from the airport, but from the surrounding communities. Most of these occurred in the evening, often in or near a park or body of water. Witnesses consistently describe a large grey, brown or black bird-like creature with humanoid features and glowing red, yellow or orange eyes. Many of the observers are overcome with feelings of intense fear after encountering the beast. One of the most credible sightings happened on December 30th, 2021 by an airport employee. Here is his account of what happened. I was working on Thursday, the 30th of the 12th, 2021, at the American Airlines aircraft hangar. At about 11:30 at night, I was outside with about 3 other individuals. We were in the process of bringing a 777-200 into the hangar to get some maintenance done on one of the engines. This was a routine that we did almost daily on a variety of planes at this particular hangar. As we were hooking up the plane to the tug to move it and communicating with each other, I looked up and saw 3 large black creatures over by the parking lot. They were about 7 feet tall each, and they were just staring right at us. I yelled out to Carlos, and he tells Robert, and all 3 of us are looking straight at these things when one of them opens what looks like large black wings and shoots off onto the sky, followed by the others, all 3 making a sort of screeching sound as they take off. A few seconds later, a security vehicle comes screaming up through the driveway and stops, and some white chubby security person runs out with his flashlight and starts checking the area. He's shortly joined by 3 other trucks and a couple of supervisors that I recognized from staff meetings. I looked over and Robert is doing the same thing I am doing and recording this on our phones. I know that both of us had to have gotten a glimpse of these creatures right as they took off. One of the supervisors came up to us and told us to stop recording and to put our phones away, or she would report us to our supervisors. The area where these things were has to have at least 4 different cameras. At least 2 are in plain sight for all to see. After about an hour, we were approached by the same supervisor, our immediate supervisor, and 3 other men, and told to go into the break room and remain in there and not talk to anyone. They came in after 10 minutes and said that we were not to talk to anyone in regards to what we saw, and that they were requiring us to send them the video we had shot on our phones and then delete the video off of our phones, or we would be immediately terminated. When we demanded that we see our union steward first, we were told this was a matter of internal security and that this superseded the authority of the union. We attempted to argue and were then told in a raised voice that we would not be allowed to leave without the deletion of the video in our phones. I did not want to lose my job after 8 years, especially when the benefits and pay were really good. So I sent my video to the supervisor's phone, and in front of her and the others, deleted the video. We were told that we were to keep this to ourselves and not allowed to speak to anyone, or we would lose our jobs. Well, after a lot of consideration, they can kiss my whole black ass, and I decided to write to you about what happened. I cannot just sit back and get told to keep something a secret just because they want to keep lining their pockets. I called and asked my union steward, and he told me he would look into it and get back to me. I've yet to hear back from him. These people ain't playing around. They have checked in on us at least twice, and I have also heard from others that have seen the same thing, that they were told to stay quiet or risk losing their jobs. So many people have been threatened with being fired if they told their story. What you hear reported are just a small piece of these things. However, that was not the end of the matter. The 4 workers have since been checked in on by security staff to ensure they remain silent about what they saw or risk losing their jobs. And it seems this is not an isolated incident. Other workers at the airport who have witnessed the creature have endured the same thing. So what are officials trying to cover up? Why the secrecy and suppression of the sightings? Is there more to these Mothman sightings than a misidentified large bird or unknown species? It is known that aside from witnessing the creature, other associated strangeness has occurred in the immediate aftermath around O'Hare International Airport. These include reports of UFOs, parapsychological phenomena, and bizarre nightmares. So what exactly is going on here? Could this area be a hotspot, a portal, if you will, to creatures and things that we cannot fully comprehend?
The Sierra Sounds. Now this is an incredibly creepy one. In 1971, Ron Moorhead and Al Berry would frequently take trips into the woods to try and catch a glimpse of Bigfoot, or Bigfoot-like creatures. These woods were located in the Sierra Nevada mountain range, again in California. On one trip, Ron brought audio recording equipment with him, with plans of filming throughout the night, in order to hopefully capture the creatures making sound. What he captured that night was almost beyond belief. A series of audio clips are available to listen to online, but the most striking of them all begins with the alleged Bigfoots banging on trees, perhaps with wood or their fists. Ape-like grunts and whooping noises follow, which don't sound anything like any of the other creatures present in the Sierra Nevada mountains. After a while, the audio turns extremely unsettling. 2 creatures can be heard speaking in an unrecognizable language to each other, which sounds very jumpy and hectic. Ron can also occasionally be heard interacting with the beasts, who shout back at him in return. Several things are striking about this audio. Firstly, no known language can be discerned from the clip. The creatures are clearly speaking in a guttural, deep tone, very different from any language known to man. Also, audio experts have analysed the clips and have found that human voices would have been unable to produce the tones and pitches of sound found in the recordings, with vocals alone. There is also no evidence that the audio has been tampered with or edited, and Ron stands by the authenticity of the clips. Take a listen, but be warned, if this isn't a hoax, and is some unknown creatures vocalizing in the woods at night, it's incredibly terrifying.
There's 2 of them across the creek at the big rocks.
The Altamahaha. The mysterious Altamahaha is a river or sea monster that supposedly resides in the coastal marshes around the mouth of the Altamaha River in the US state of Georgia. It's most frequently spotted in the area around Darien and Butler Island, and is a popular part of the culture and folklore of coastal Georgia, and is one of the most cited cryptids in North America. This monster is described as having a sturgeon-like, green, greyish body, including a bony ridge on its top with a whitish yellow underbelly, front flippers and no back limbs,
It swims like a dolphin and has the snout of an alligator, with large protruding eyes and large sharp teeth. Reports indicate that it's 20 to 30 feet long, though some have stated seeing smaller or larger versions of the unknown animal, suggesting it's not a lone creature. Sightings of the Altamaha date back to 1830, when Captain Delano of the schooner Eagle reported seeing a sea creature he described as being 70 feet long, with a body circumference as big as a sugar hogshead, with an alligator-shaped head that protruded about 8 feet out of the water. He spotted the beast off St. Simons Island, just below the mouth of the Altamaha. The sighting was verified by others. 5 men on the schooner also saw it, and a number of planters from St. Simons Island said they had seen something strange as well, although some eyewitnesses believe the creature was a whale. The monster's profile was raised again in 1981 when newspapers across the US ran a story about a reported sighting made by Larry Gwynn, who was out fishing with his friend on the river when they saw 2 big humps about 5 feet apart poking out of the water. They described the creature as moving extremely fast and leaving behind a track like that of a speedboat. After the article was published, other witnesses came forward. One of those was Harvey Blackman of Brunswick, who said he had seen the same creature at a point called Two-Way on the Altamaha River in the 1970s. He recounted it as having a snake-like head and being 15 to 20 feet long. Another eyewitness, Frank Culpepper, told of a similar creature and its track in the same area. He said it left behind a surge of water so big that it caused boats to bump about. One of the men with him ran for a rifle, but the creature had gone before he could get a shot in. The sightings of the monster in the early 1800s confirm that people have been seeing something strange in the waters around the mouth of the Altamaha River for a long time, and reports of the Altamaha continue to this day. In 2010, an amateur photographer captured video of something strange swimming in the channel off Fort King George Historical Site in Darien. Take a look. Similar to the Loch Ness Monster, the Altamaha has become a bit of a tourist attraction, with visitors armed with binoculars, telescopes and cameras, often on the waterfront, hoping to catch a glimpse of this elusive creature.
The Nukahlavi. Orkney is a group of small islands off the northeast coast of Scotland. The largest of these is Skara Brae, a preserved 12th century village with a reconstructed house and a chambered burial tomb. It is also where the Nukahlavi can be found, a mythical creature that shares the land and the waters with any humans who wish to engage with it. The word Nukahlavi derives from the Orcadian word meaning devil of the sea. It is thought to be a shape-shifting creature that looks different in the water to when it's on land. Its appearance in the water is unknown, but on land it is a horrifying hybrid of a man and a horse. A fused together creature with a huge human head and red eyes burned into its forehead. The human head and torso with very long arms are attached without legs to the back of a horse. To add to its hideous appearance, the creature has no hair or skin. It has a raw, sinewy body with black blood running through its veins. When it moves, every pulsating muscle is visible. Its intentions towards all humans is entirely malevolent. The Nukahlavi only has one enemy, and that is a female creature from Orcadian folklore, known as the Mither of the Sea. Only she has the power to keep the monster in the water and off the land away from humans. However, she only visits in the summer, so in the winter, any passing humans are at the mercy of the Nukahlavi. But all hope is not lost, because the power of the beast can be curtailed by fresh water and rain, something that is in plentiful supply in Orkney, especially in the winter, and that is probably why he rarely makes an appearance these days. Nevertheless, we never know when this loathsome creature might make his presence felt. If he does resurrect, his poisoned breath alone is enough to kill livestock, wreak havoc on the locals and visitors alike. So if you ever find yourself in Orkney, be on your guard.
The Ruby Creek Bigfoot Encounter. Another old sighting, this time from September of 1941 in British Columbia. George Chapman and his family were outside their home, relaxing in the fields on a quiet afternoon, when the unthinkable happened. George's eldest son bolted from the fields towards the house, panicked, exclaiming that a large cow had appeared at the foot of the nearby mountains, on the outskirts of the surrounding woods. George's wife consoled the boy, then started off in the direction her son had emerged from, to see what the fuss was about. Sure enough, Mrs. Chapman saw something, but it wasn't a cow. She described the beast, which she first assumed was a bear, as being covered in 4 inches of thick fur, which was brown all over. The creature stood over 7 feet tall and was human-like, only exceptionally bulky and with very long arms. The proposed Bigfoot was a mere 30 meters from Mrs. Chapman by the end of the encounter, when her children ran to her, and the creature skulked off into the woods. Supposedly, when George Chapman was investigating the surrounding area later that day, the family's shed had been broken into, barrels of fish had been raided, and long brown hairs were found in the vicinity. Footprints, giant footprints at that, had also been found leading away from the property, and the family often heard the creature letting out a strange gurgling whistle in the dead of night in the following days. The Mothman may have tried to warn people of the Fukushima disaster. In the days leading up to the deadly 2011 Japanese earthquake and tsunami, a witness named Marcus Pools claimed to have made a sighting of what he believes was the Mothman. Pools had been in Japan on business in February of 2011 and had decided to stay with a friend in the rural town of Okuma in the Fukushima region. One day the two friends went out to look around the town, and in the evening went to the seaside, walking along a path that took them close to the Dashi Fukushima nuclear power plant. As they walked along, Pools claims that he heard a sudden whoosh, followed by an ear-piercing shriek, the likes of which he had never heard before. As they looked back towards the plant, they saw a figure Pools described as. From the distance I was at, it looked to be sitting on top of one of the squared-shaped buildings. It sat there for about 5 seconds, then it unfurled a large set of what I could only describe as large black wings. The creature took flight, circling the plant a few times before coming closer. That's when I noticed the 2 large red eyes. They seemed to glow from within and with a blood-red hue. They were unblinking in the 3 to 4 seconds we saw them. We knew they were looking straight at us. We knew this creature knew we could see it, and it made no attempt to disguise itself. After witnessing the unknown creature, Pools described an immense feeling of dread that washed over him, before the creature vanished as quickly as it had appeared. A few weeks later, when Pools was back home in America, he heard the news about the devastation caused by the Japanese earthquake. The massive magnitude 9 earthquake that struck on March 11th, 2011, and generated a devastating tsunami that battered the coastal Tohoku region of the country, and left death and destruction in its wake. As if that wasn't bad enough, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant was also so badly damaged that it went into a nuclear meltdown, poisoning the environment, its animals, its people, and causing lasting damage that reverberates to this day. Thousands upon thousands of people were killed, and many more were injured or left homeless. The once thriving communities were left broken and devastated by the power of nature. After seeing the devastation, Pools thought back to his frightening encounter with the winged humanoid bird, and wondered if this was the mythical Mothman, doing his strange work of predicting disasters. This seemed to be reinforced when another witness came forward, who claimed on the evening of the disaster he was hiking with a friend not far from the nuclear facility, when they spotted a very large flying creature that at first they thought was a very large bird. They estimated it to have a wingspan of at least 10 to 15 feet, and the 2 men were transfixed on the creature as it silently flew off in the direction of the power plant. However, as it came closer, they soon realized it was not a bird. It was some kind of humanoid beast with recognizable arms and legs, and huge leathery wings, and an oversized head. For a moment, it sat on one of the plant's buildings before leaping off the edge and disappearing into the night sky. The man, who wants to remain anonymous, also got the feeling that the creature knew what was about to happen.
The Do-War-Chu. We have all heard of the Loch Ness Monster, the elusive creature that lurks in the depths of a vast freshwater loch in the Scottish Highlands. However, few could be aware that Ireland has its own version of the monster, known as Do-War-Chu. Do-War-Chu, roughly translated, means waterhound, or hound of deep, and those who have witnessed it describe it as a cross between a giant otter and a dog. It is said to be about the length of a fully grown crocodile, and is sometimes referred to as the Irish crocodile. It is a bloodthirsty deep-water creature that lives in rivers, lakes, and even the sea. It is thought it migrates to warmer water in the winter, and has the ability to travel extreme distances in a very short time. On rare occasions, when Do-War-Chu is hungry, it will venture onto land, and allegedly has an appetite for human flesh. The beast is usually found in pairs, although they hunt separately, and when in danger, give off an eerie high-pitched whistling sound to warn each other. Despite being known as a cryptid, a term that refers to a creature who is unrecognized, there is evidence to suggest its existence. Reports dating back to 1896 tell how a young lady called Miss Walkington described a creature she had witnessed as being half wolf dog and half fish. Modern sightings of the creature centre around the Shreens Lough and Achill Island in County Mayo, and as recently as 2000, Irish artist Sean Corcoran and his wife claimed to have witnessed a sighting of Do-War-Chu in a lake on Omey Island in Connemara County, Galway. They described it as large and black with orange flippers that swam at extreme speed and gave out a haunting screech as it disappeared behind a boulder. Some consider Do-War-Chu to be an immature form of the famous Loch Ness Monster, and this is backed up by an interesting link between Ireland and Scotland. The first sighting of the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland in the 17th century by Irish missionary St. Columba, who allegedly challenged the monster by using his spiritual powers to miraculously save a man from being devoured by the beast. It is said that Nessie's offspring came to the Lake of Ireland to avenge the actions of St. Columba's. Another monster with connections to Do-War-Chu is Bessie, who is said to inhabit Lake Erie in the US. Descriptions of both creatures are almost identical. However, perhaps the most convincing account of Do-War-Chu happened in Glenade, County Leitrim, in 1722, when the beast murdered Grace Connolly, who lived in the townland of Creeverley on the northwestern part of Glenade Lake. On September 22nd, Grace went down to the lake to bathe and wash some clothes when a huge sea creature emerged from the water and savagely attacked and killed her. She was later found by her husband Terence, who witnessed the monster lying across his dead wife's body. Terence immediately found his dagger and killed the monster. However, as we mentioned previously, as it was attacked, it let out a high-pitched whistle, which alerted its mate, who charged at Terence and chased him for many miles as he tried to escape on his horse. Terence was forced to stop when his horse threw a shoe, and he took it to a blacksmith in Cashel Garran. The blacksmith gave Terence a sword and told him, when the creature charges, he'll put his head right through the horse. As soon as he does this, you be quick and cut his head off. As the beast caught up to him, it charged at his horse, and as predicted, put its head right through the horse. Terence, determined to avenge his wife's death, put his sword through Do-War-Chu's head, killing it instantly. Now, if this story seems far-fetched, then it's worth looking at Conway Cemetery in Drummonds near the village of Kinlough. There is a grave of Grace Connolly, and carved on her tombstone is a detailed engraving of her killer, Do-War-Chu. The creature is depicted lying down in its death throes, with a spear-like weapon held by a human hand, thrust through its body. Terence's grave, also in the graveyard, depicts him on his horse with a sword in his hand.
The Werewolf of Alaris. In 19th century Spain, serial killer Manuel Blanco Romasanta claimed the reason for his murderous reign was because he was a wolf. Manuel was born into a wealthy family in northwest Spain. However, his parents believed him to be female and originally named him Manuela. His gender confusion was not resolved until a doctor corrected them 6 years later. In his early teens, Manuel stopped growing and stood at just 4'6" tall. As an adult, he worked as a tailor and a tour guide. He married briefly, but his wife died suddenly in 1833, after which Manuel became a travelling salesman through Spain and Portugal. In 1844, he was charged with murder after he killed Vincent Fernandez, the constable of Leon, but Manuel didn't attend his trial and instead went on the run. For many years, he worked jobs considered abnormal for men in those times, including yarn making and cooking, and resumed his work as a tour guide. However, his clients started disappearing. Manuel kept up correspondence with the families of the missing, so they were none the wiser. The ruse worked for a time, until Manuel was spotted selling clothes belonging to the missing people. In 1852, a complaint was filed in the city of Escalona that claimed Manuel had turned the body fat of his murder victims into soap and sold the bars to the public. The gruesome allegation turned out to be true. In September of the same year, Manuel was arrested and brought to trial in Alaris for the murder of 13 people, ranging in age from 10 to 47. His defense, however, was unlike anything ever heard in a court of law. Manuel claimed to be a victim of lycanthropy, an illness that made him transform into a werewolf and roam the streets looking for prey. This is what he said. "The first time I transformed was in the mountains of Cusco. I came across 2 furious-looking wolves. I suddenly fell to the floor and began to feel convulsions. I rolled over 3 times, and a few seconds later I myself was a wolf. I was out meandering with the other 2 for 5 days, until I returned to my own body, the one you see before you today. The other 2 wolves came with me, who I thought were also wolves, changed into human form. They were from Valencia. One was called Antonio and the other Don Gennaro. They too were cursed. We attacked and ate a number of people because we were hungry." Ultimately, Manuel was acquitted of 4 murders, ironically because the victims had shown signs of dying in real wolf attacks. He was found guilty of the other 9 slayings and sentenced to death by garroting. This was later commuted to life imprisonment. On December 14, 1863, Manuel died behind bars. His cause of death was stomach cancer. However, there is a persistent rumour that suggests he was shot by a guard who wanted to witness him transform into a wolf. Squeaky thermal. In April 2009, Michael Green shot 3 minutes of video through a thermal imager. The footage was filmed in the Uwharrie National Forest in North Carolina. Green, a retired chief of state fraud investigator, had been searching for Sasquatch for the past 20 years and believes he finally found proof of the elusive beast. In 2008, he briefly saw the creature in the national forest, and over the next year, frequently returned, trying to encourage it to show its face again. He camped out overnight and left out bananas, apples, peanut butter, Zagnut bars, and little squeaky toys, hence the squeaky thermal as the clip is known. His patience finally paid off when at around 11:30 p.m. on April 28, 2009, Green heard rustling in the woods. He set up the thermal imager and put it on a tripod with a digital video recorder and left the area. He then parked up and waited 2 hours before returning. By this time the battery on the imager was dead, but the bait was gone. Before we show you what was recorded, it's worth noting that a thermal imager only sees images made by heat. So for example, if a man was dressed in a costume, the image would be patchy and irregular, as his costume would suppress the body heat, whereas a naked man or other creature would appear primarily as a solid colour. Take a look. Green estimates the creature was around 7.5 feet tall, although it's hard to be exact. It took one of the Zagnut bars before retreating backwards and then reappearing, swaying slowly back and forth. The Mercy Brown Vampire Incident. Let's travel back in time to 1892 to explore a strange tale from Rhode Island. In the town of Exeter lived George and Mary Brown, the parents of a family with several children. They were unlucky enough to find themselves at the forefront of a few waves of tuberculosis infections. At the time, a deadly disease spread by bacteria via coughs and sneezes, which ultimately caused respiratory difficulties. If left untreated, it can result in death, and in the late 1800s, this was a very real and very scary threat, which at the time led to superstition and rumour. Mary, the mother of the family, died first, losing her life to the disease in 1884. Later the same year, Mary and George's eldest daughter, also named Mary, would then pass. Following this, the family's younger daughter, Mercy, would die in 1891, and Edwin, their youngest son, would catch the disease later that same year. Now, around the time that Edwin caught tuberculosis, a strange rumour started to spread about Mary and George's family, possibly due to the rate at which they were dying. People in the local neighbourhood began to speculate that a member of the Brown family was a vampire, and one that had been responsible for the illnesses in the family. George, the family's father, vehemently denied the accusations, but was overpowered by the opinions of the local community. He was eventually forced to exhume the bodies of his family members for inspection, overseen by local doctors and reported upon by the local newspaper. At this point, both Marys had been buried for a significant amount of time, and their bodies had been decomposed to the expected extent. Then the exhuming party moved on to Mercy's grave, the family's younger daughter, who had died several months earlier. When they cracked open her coffin to reveal her lifeless body, what they reportedly saw was enough to terrify the townspeople. Mercy's body had barely decomposed at all, leaving her in almost the same state she was in upon death. What's more is that blood was still present in her heart. The townspeople saw this as evidence of a vampire in the town, and immediate action needed to be taken as a result. Mercy's heart and liver were removed from her body and burned upon a pyre. The ashes of these organs were added to water for Edwin to drink. As was the superstition at the time, somebody who had been exposed to a vampire needed to consume the burnt organs of said vampire in order to be cured. Unsurprisingly, the strange folk cure did not work, and Edwin succumbed to tuberculosis 2 months later. He was buried along with what was left of his sister. So what happened here? Why was Mercy's body seemingly so fresh after months of being buried in the ground? Well, superstition aside, the answer can most likely be found in where she was buried. Mercy's remains were first entombed in a crypt, which sat above the ground. It would have essentially been exposed to the elements throughout the winter, and the body is thought to have been frozen as a result, preserving it for several months and preventing the blood from travelling through her veins. It's either that, or she was really a vampire. Groot slang. According to a legend, somewhere in Richardsveld, close to the banks of the Orange River in South Africa, is an area of scrubland with a deep cavern that is crammed with diamonds. However, no one ever dares to go near the cavern for fear of encountering a legendary cryptid known as the Groot slang. The giant snake-like creature is said to be 40 feet long, with enormous gleaming diamond eyes. Allegedly, the beast is as old as the world itself. The story tells that the gods responsible for creation made a terrible mistake when they created the Groot slang, and unknowingly gave it incredible strength, cunning, and intellect. When they realized the gravity of their error, the gods split the Groot slang into 2 separate creatures and created the first elephants and the first snakes instead. But before they could do this, one of the original Groot slangs escaped, and from it all the other Groot slangs were born. Only one fearless prospector is said to have tried to explore the cavern, and he used a winch to reach a ledge deep within the cave, but the smell of sulphur and the bats that flew at him caused him to drop his torch, and he was hauled back to the surface never to try again. Over the years, various reports of sightings have appeared in South African newspapers, and witnesses confirm the creature's length as around 40 feet, that leaves a trail of 3 feet wide tracks in the muddy banks of the Orange River. When the Groot slang emerges from the cavern, it's believed to swim in warm rivers and lakes. The legend tells of how Groot slangs desire gems, especially diamonds, and despite their lust for cruelty, victims can often bargain for their freedom by offering the beast enough of the precious gems. In 1917, English businessman Peter Grayson disappeared after members of his party were attacked by lions while searching for diamonds in the area, and he is believed to have been a victim of Grutslang. However, despite the outlandish claims about Grutslang, it could actually exist as an unidentified giant snake, possibly a python. It's known that these reptiles can grow to extreme lengths, and Medusa, a reticulated python, was recorded as the longest snake in captivity, reaching 25 feet and 2 inches long. So it's not completely out of the question that in the wild a python could reach length in excess of that. Pythons are known to inhabit the area, and if you come face to face with a huge one, it would be easy to exaggerate its size. The last cabin in Portlock. Visit the town of Portlock, Alaska today, and you won't see much. One solitary, dilapidated cabin stands on the verge of some dense pine forests in a silent, eerie clearing. It's hard to believe that this was once a bustling town founded in the 1780s. This persisted for hundreds of years until the town was suddenly abandoned in 1950 due to some strange occurrences in the surrounding woods. It started in 1905 when staff at the local cannery refused to work on account of something that had been bothering them. Things took a turn for the worse when hunters and gold prospectors began to disappear in the 1930s, taking their daily trips out to the woods and failing to return home at the end of the day. A body was even found in 1931 which had been killed by a single blow without the use of a weapon, something that would have been difficult for a human to manage. 18-inch long footprint tails were also discovered in the area, and people would occasionally catch a glimpse of a huge, hairy figure attacking and destroying local property. Further bodies continued to appear, bearing strange bite marks and impact wounds unassociated with those made by bears or wolves. Finally, by 1950, the townspeople could take no more and packed up and left the town. Several photos exist of the final cabin, which still stands to this day, surrounded by the woods, where so many are supposed to have met their ends at the hands of mysterious creatures. Pennsylvania Sasquatch. We love Bigfoot, and this next video's origin isn't anything recent, but the video itself has recently gone viral for the incredibly fascinating yet fearsome discovery it depicts. In the video, a farmer from Pennsylvania in the United States was investigating strange occurrences happening in the woodlands behind his family's backyard. What he found was nothing short of terrifying. Take a look. The footage appears to show an albino or otherwise white Sasquatch creature, its haunting black eyes staring directly into the soul of the viewer. It only happens for a moment though, before the Pennsylvania Bigfoot turns and runs off into the night. For all of the Sasquatch sightings and videos reported on in the past couple of decades, this one is considered one of, if not the best footage of a potential Bigfoot. The beast in the video has high shoulders, a long upper lip, large triangular eyes, a pronounced brow ridge, along with consistent colour and shine to its fur or hair. Some viewers wonder if this isn't necessarily an albino Sasquatch, but rather a relatively older creature, hence why it appears white on camera. Along with the video, the third party who uploaded it provided the following caption: "Strange noises being heard at night of what appears to be some sort of Bigfoot human-looking type creature. The creature though is white in colour. A homeowner captured this footage when they heard a disturbance in the backyard of their wooded property. The homeowner and others in this town had previously heard strange noises and disturbances for the last 2 weeks or so, prior to this being captured on film. The town was confirmed as Carbondale, Pennsylvania." Like all Bigfoot videos, there are those who are skeptical of the authenticity. Some believe this is nothing more than a Halloween costume camouflaged by the poor quality of the footage and low light offered by the farmer's flashlight. However, some cryptid experts have analysed the video and believe it truly does depict a creature of non-human origin. In recent years, the town of Carbondale, Pennsylvania, has continued hearing strange noises in the night, as well as potential sightings of similar beasts stalking the surrounding woods. While footage as good as this has yet to be recovered, it's only a matter of time before the terrifying mystery of the albino Sasquatch reaches its next chapter.
The Creepy Lantern Man. Wicken Fen in Cambridgeshire is a 629-acre national nature reserve, part of which is owned by the National Trust. The reserve includes farmland, marsh, and reed beds. It is amongst these reed beds that evil spirits hide, lying in wait for their unsuspecting victims. Known as the Lantern Men, they are only visible at night by the light they emit as they dance around the wetlands, skipping in and out of the reeds. According to legend, the Lantern Men can be found not only at Wicken, but at other marshy areas around Great Britain. It is said that they are attracted by the sound of whistling, and similar to the legend of the Will-o'-the-Wisp, they lure their victims to a watery grave. However, unlike the Will-o'-the-Wisp, who entice their prey to treacherous areas, the Lantern Men attack whoever comes near them. Unsuspecting walkers whistling to their dogs are most at risk, as they do not realize the whistling is a major attraction to the Lantern Men. Those who are aware believe carrying a torch will protect them, but that is not true, as apparently shining a torch causes them to run towards the light. The most tragic tale of a Lantern Man attack happened many years ago, when a local man attracted the attention of the spirit while visiting his dog in the fen. In an attempt to escape the evil spirits, he took shelter at the home of a friend, who hung a horn on a long pole out of the window to distract the evil, but the following morning the horn was found to be burnt up and the man and his dog were missing. Another encounter with the Lantern Men happened several miles away in the marshes of Norfolk. One evening in 1809, wherryman Joseph Bexfield was enjoying a drink with his fellow sailors when he remembered he had left a parcel for his wife on the boat. Fearing the wrath of his wife, he decided to travel back to the boat alone and pick up the package. His fellow drinkers urged him not to walk through the marshes at night, but he didn't heed their warnings and ventured out into the eerie darkness. That was the last time he was seen alive. When Joseph failed to return home or show up for work the following morning, a search of the marshes was carried out, but no trace was found, and locals feared he had become a victim of the Lantern Men. 3 days later, Joseph's body was washed up on the banks of the River Yare, and many believed he was lured to his death by the Lantern Men. Joseph was buried in Thurleton churchyard, where his grave is still visible to this day, and it is said on misty nights the shadowy ghost of Joseph can be seen, carrying his lantern, as he would have been on the night of his death. If you walk through rotten bogs or marshland at night, the chances are you will see flickering lights. The scientific explanation for this is that the stagnant swamp water lets off gas and spontaneously combusts, causing tiny sparks of fiery light. However, over the years, these lights have been the subject of many superstitions and legends, with many believing the light draws you dangerously close to the water's edge, where you are likely to meet an unfortunate end. So next time you find yourself walking through marshland here in the UK after dark, don't be enticed by the Lantern Men that will surround you.
The Bigfoot of Cornwall. Travelling to the other side of the world now, to the United Kingdom, a truly unnerving story has appeared in Cornwall, in the southwesternmost tip of England. In the year 2000, in the little village of St. Morgan, an anonymous individual reported their story to the British Bigfoot Research Organisation, who made it public. The individual, who was around 22 years old at the time, was working in a nearby field when he heard a loud, repetitive knocking sound on a nearby tree, a signal that many Bigfoot enthusiasts say is indicative of a creature in the area. When the group he was working alongside left for the day, he stayed behind to see if he could find out what was making the noises. A series of clicking and whistling sounds continued to come from the tree line when a strange humanoid face emerged from the bushes. The eyewitness described the creature as being 6'5" in height, with a copper-coloured coat of fur. It looked right at him before turning and disappearing into the woods. It sounds like a strange encounter indeed, but the eyewitness claims he is 100% certain that he saw Bigfoot that day. Jinn caught on camera. The following photo comes from Makkah, a town from the western regions of Saudi Arabia. It's an image that was captured on CCTV security cameras posted in the Secretariat building, close to where the Kaaba, the holiest shrine in all of the Islamic world, is kept. In the early hours, at around 3 AM on October 2013, the security cameras within the building picked up something highly irregular. Standing to the right of what seems to be a series of building entrances can be seen a semi-transparent figure clad in a draping of white material. It looks very similar, in fact, to many of the Western depictions of ghosts, sighted at medieval castles and historical sites. It looks as though the figure is without a face, or at least it lacks one that can be seen clearly. Al Madina Arabic Language Daily, the paper that initially published the picture, have suggested that the creature could be a jinn, but it was not clear what its intentions were. Jinns are infamous characters from Arabian and Muslim mythology, spirits who can appear in a variety of forms, both human and animal. They are capable of possession, and are associated with snakes, scorpions, and lizards. Often referred to in Western regions as genies, they are neither good nor evil, and can turn invisible at will. Jinns are mentioned in the Quran. The belief in them dates back to before the 7th century. While the existence of jinns has obviously never been proven, there is an uncanny humanoid presence about the character in the photo. Some comments state that it could be a trick of the light or an insect on the lens of the camera causing a blurry white patch. Others are convinced this is real-life evidence of a jinn. Hike from Hell. In 2009, an experienced hiker, who we will call John, travelled to Redding, California to catch up with an old college friend and do a spot of hiking. The trip was going well until on the third day his friend was feeling unwell, so he went alone. The hike would take John along Lake Shasta, where he intended to take photos of the stunning views. However, after 2 miles of hiking, John realised he had left his camera behind. Extremely frustrated, John decided to carry on anyway. As he weaved through the trees towards his next destination, John got the odd feeling that he was not alone, so he stopped and looked around, but could see nothing. Feeling vulnerable and alone deep in the forest, John retrieved his knife from his backpack. He carried on walking, checking as he went, when suddenly he heard a rock hitting a tree. By now, John was getting nervous and stepped up his pace. As he walked, he could hear a loud cracking coming from his right, followed by a rock thrown in front of him. John could also hear footsteps behind him. When he reached a clearing, he was relieved, until he realised the only way back was the way he came. John reached for his phone, but there was zero signal. His only escape was to go back through the forest. After some time, John decided to go for it and moved as quickly as he could, racked with fear and aware that whatever it was still following him. As he stepped at the pace, so did the follower. And just as John thought he was getting to the end, he tripped on a root and face planted into the undergrowth. John lay there briefly before realising his knee was in great pain. As he looked at his damaged knee, to the left, something stood over him. It was tall, covered in reddish-brown hair, and looked like an ape. It had a hairy face with greyish skin underneath, and it was staring right at him. Injured and terrified, John got up and slowly limped away. Thankfully, the creature did not follow this time, and he made it back to his car safely. John is convinced he encountered a Bigfoot that day, an intelligent creature that backed off once it knew he was hurt. He has since returned to Lake Shasta and has never seen it again, but he has done countless hours of research and believes the creature was more intelligent than a normal animal, although he still has no idea what he encountered that day. Old Stinker, Barmston Drain in Hull. In 2016, residents of Hull, a Yorkshire city in the UK, reported seeing an 8-foot-tall hairy humanoid creature prowling a derelict industrial area just outside the city centre. Eyewitnesses described it as half man, half dog, that stood upright one moment, and the next was down on all fours running like a dog. One resident described how it vaulted over a 30-foot fence and vanished up an embankment. Another said that they seen something tall and hairy jump over an 8-foot fence, carrying a German Shepherd dog in its jaws. The sightings have been linked to the local legend of a werewolf called Old Stinker, described as a great hairy beast with red eyes, who got its name due to its foul-smelling breath. The legend of Old Stinker has been around for decades, and in recent years he is thought to reside near Barmston Drain, a man-made waterway that runs through Hull. It's a popular spot for fishing and birdwatching, but it's also known for its eerie atmosphere. It is said that Old Stinker, a werewolf-like creature, roams around the area at night. Some people claim to have seen it, while others have heard its howls in the distance. The legend likely derived from a time when wolves roamed freely in the UK and were known to dig up corpses from graveyards. From that sprung the idea that they were supernatural beings who took the form of werewolves. The Battle of Ape Canyon. Let's go back in time to 1924 now, to an alarming incident that was reported in a narrow canyon on Mount St. Helens' eastern face. The area was initially famous for Bigfoot sightings, and investigators would often take to the woods to try and catch a glimpse of the tall, hairy cryptid, after reports of strange noises in the woods were filed. This curious tale begins when in the summer of 1924, several gold prospectors bolted out of the woods, claiming that 7-foot-tall gorilla men attacked them in the woods. They were out working when they saw 4 gigantic shapes start to move through the trees, claiming they had upright pointed ears, covered from head to toe in layers of thick black fur. Fred Beck, one of the prospectors, who was terrified by what he had seen, fired his rifle at one of the figures, forcing one of the creatures to topple backwards off a cliff, presumably falling to its death. Later that night, the men were awoken in their cabins by the sounds of thudding and banging on their cabins' walls. The sounds of rocks and bodies crashing into the side of the building alarmed the men, who watched helplessly as one of the figures from earlier on in the day tore a hole in the wooden roof. According to the men, one of the rocks wielded by the creatures was hurled at Beck, who was knocked unconscious for more than 2 hours after it hit him. The men apparently managed to fend off the creatures, who fled when the sun came up. Beck awoke, and the men fled to the nearest town, relaying their story. The original Mothman. Would you believe it's been over 50 years since the original sighting of the Mothman? The creature was first witnessed on November 12, 1966, when 5 gravediggers working near Point Pleasant, West Virginia, claimed to have seen a man-like figure with huge bat wings fly down from nearby trees straight over their heads. A few days later, Roger Scarberry, his wife, and 3 others ran terrified into the Mason County Courthouse, claiming they had also witnessed a 7-foot creature with glowing red eyes and huge wings that followed them in their car for some time before flying off into the night sky, just before they reached the courthouse. Deputy Millard Halstead, who had been on duty that night, said he was convinced that people were not lying. He knew them, and all 5 gave exactly the same account of what they had seen, even though they were interviewed separately. The deputy later said the terror in their eyes was very real. The incident was taken so seriously that Scarberry and Halstead revisited the site near the McClintic Wildlife Management Area, where the creature had been first spotted. And although nothing was found, it wasn't long before the locals got wind of the sightings, and in fear of their lives, took up arms and started combing the area to try and track down and kill the beast. The search was unsuccessful, and not long after the creature made another appearance. Marcella Bennett, who was completely unaware of the sightings, was visiting a friend who lived close to the wildlife area. As she left the house to walk to her car, she was confronted by a large grey, human-like creature with giant wings and glowing red eyes. Marcella was so terrified she dropped her infant daughter to the ground and lay on top of her to protect her. She stayed motionless for several minutes before eventually getting up and running back to the house, where the police were quickly called. Her friends also witnessed this creature as it walked up to the porch and tried to peer through the glass door, but it quickly disappeared as officers approached. Throughout that year, many more locals came forward with similar sightings, some saying they had kept quiet about their encounters for fear they would not be believed. All the witnesses described the exact same creature with its dark human-like face, glowing red eyes, huge wingspan, and strange vertical takeoff before disappearing into the sky. A year after the original sightings, tragedy struck for the residents of Point Pleasant. On December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge, a steel bridge connecting the states of Ohio and West Virginia, and the main route into the town of Point Pleasant, mysteriously collapsed. The accident took the lives of 46 people, 2 of which were never found. In the hours leading up to the disaster, people saw a giant bird standing on top of the bridge. Many believe this was the same terrifying Mothman that had been spotted in and around the town in the months before the disaster, and that he was either showing himself as a warning of the imminent bridge collapse, or that it was he who was responsible for it. After the bridge collapsed, the Mothman sightings completely stopped, and he has never been seen again. Despite this tragedy, the town of Point Pleasant has kept the Mothman legend alive, and it attracts hundreds of tourists every year. It even holds a yearly Mothman festival, has a Mothman museum, and has installed a 12-foot metallic statue of the creature. The town certainly keeps the legend alive, and it does make you wonder what exactly did the people of Point Pleasant witness back in the late 1960s. Life-changing horror in Canada. This next true encounter happened in Canada, near the city of Nugent in Hudson Bay. Cynthia Guem had moved from Eastern Europe to Canada as a child and was an avid explorer, often venturing out into the snow-covered wilderness. After a particularly bad week, Cynthia, then 26 years old, decided to spend the weekend exploring. As he ventured out into the snow, he followed an unfamiliar path and was shocked when he came across a huge mound of excrement. He didn't think much of it, he just figured it was a bear or some other creature. After trekking further, he became aware of an overwhelming stench. He looked around to see the source and discovered something had urinated over a tree. And this was not an average amount of urine, it was a vast quantity. Again, he didn't think too much of it and carried on and set up camp. As darkness set in, Cynthia sat admiring the stars. The flames from the campfire lit up the trees behind him, and he caught sight of a face. It had pink human features, but it wasn't a human. Whatever it was hurried away, but Cynthia was so disturbed that he felt he needed to get away. However, in the dark, that wasn't a viable option, so instead he built the fire as big as he could to try and deter what it was that was watching him. As he tried to settle, he heard a nightmare-inducing scream. He couldn't see anything but knew something was there. Things got worse as more screams were heard and the noise encompassed him. He had to make a decision to get out of there. He felt that he had stumbled into Bigfoot territory and there was more than one creature surrounding him. Terrified, he made a run for it. As he ran, he bumped into something but managed to get up and kept going. He could still hear the screaming of the creatures, but he just kept running. Instead of getting away from the noise, he seemed to be running towards it. In the darkness, he spotted the outline of more than one bipedal creature, slamming their huge arms into the ground and jumping up and down. Before he knew it, he was being chased. In the darkness, he found himself airborne as he plunged down a bank. No longer able to carry on, he lay injured on the ground, resigned to his fate as the creatures moved closer. Suddenly there was a silence. They all retreated, and all he could hear now was the sounds of cars on a nearby road. Somehow he dragged himself to the roadside and flagged down a car. Cynthia spent many weeks in hospital to treat his physical and psychological injuries. However, despite his vivid claims about Bigfoot chasing him, he was considered sane. Once he was released, he didn't talk about what happened. This story came from leaked hospital records, and the whereabouts of Cynthia are unknown. Olgoi Kokoi. The Gobi Desert is one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, blisteringly hot during the day and freezing cold at night. And if legends are to be believed, this forbidding landscape may be the home of a true monster. For years, the local tribes in the area have told tales of a very strange creature, up to 2 feet long, bright red in colour, and lacking any legs or eyes. It burrows beneath the desert sand, rising up to capture prey. The local people call the creature Olgorkorkoi, or loosely translated, large intestine worm. However, to the Western world, it's better known as the Mongolian deathworm. The terrifying creature first came to the public's attention in 1926, when Gobi tribesmen shared their sightings with paleontologist Roy Chapman Andrews. The creature is said to be extremely dangerous, able to spit a corrosive acid-like substance at its attackers that can melt through solid metal, and it's even said to be able to discharge an electric current strong enough to kill a person on contact. Many expeditions have been launched to the Gobi to try and find the deathworm, and while none have found conclusive proof of its existence, the locals of the area treat its existence very seriously, to the point that they would abandon villages when a deathworm sighting is reported nearby. So is it possible that one of the world's most sensational creatures may actually exist, concealed beneath the sands of the southern Gobi Desert, while despite there being virtually no evidence of its existence ever being found, either alive or dead, there are a variety of explanations that could explain the alleged sightings. However, it's worth pointing out that despite its nickname, it is definitely not a giant worm. The creature, if it exists, in the inhospitable Gobi Desert, could not be a soft, fleshy worm. Instead, it's likely to be a type of snake or legless lizard. It could be a misidentified or new species of snake or a reptile known as worm lizard, which does resemble a large worm and burrows underground. It can also reach several feet in length. Others believe it could be a type of sand boa snake. Of course, these known species are not a perfect match for the deathworm. For example, terrestrial snakes cannot deliver lethal electric shocks the way that electric eels, for example, can. Although there are several known venomous snakes, primarily cobras and vipers, that can spit poison, which, although not acidic, can certainly cause harm and blindness. Making allowances for the exaggeration found in rumour, legend and folklore, the worm lizard or a sand snake seem likely candidates, or maybe a hybrid mixture of the two could explain the Mongolian deathworm. The Patterson-Gimlin film. What better place to start than here? We've all seen it, and every Bigfoot enthusiast will be very familiar with it. It is by a long way the most famous encounter that has ever taken place, and continues to baffle both experts and skeptics to this day. The surprisingly clear footage was recorded by Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin in 1967 in the forests of Northern California, and allegedly shows a large bipedal, hairy creature walking towards the tree line, away from Patterson and Gimlin. The creature briefly turns back to look at the cameraman before disappearing into the woods. It is a striking piece of footage indeed, even for the stoic non-believers. It's a piece of footage that has been barraged with accusations of hoaxes from the beginning, but both Patterson and Gimlin have sworn on the clip's authenticity. On the other hand, such a convincing hoax would have been hard to fake given the time the footage was recorded, and you can clearly observe movement in the fur and skin of the creature as it walks towards the forest. Let's take a look at a chilling sighting of the Mothman at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. In the north of the Ukrainian SSR, exploded during a routine test. This was the start of a series of explosions and fires that released radioactive contaminants into the air that drifted over parts of the USSR, Europe, Scandinavia, and Eastern North America. Large areas of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia were so badly contaminated that 336,000 people had to be evacuated. 49,000 of those were from the nearby city of Pripyat, a place they never returned to. The Chernobyl disaster, as the incident is now known, is considered the worst accident ever in the history of nuclear power. The initial explosion killed 2 engineers, and over the course of the next few months, 28 more people would die as a result of radiation poisoning, one of the worst possible ways to die, and many more would lose their lives prematurely as a result of being exposed to radiation, mostly from cancer-related illnesses. The question is, was the disaster foreseen by a strange bird-like creature seen around the power plant in the days leading up to the disaster? Several workers claim to have witnessed the creature, and all the sightings describe the same large, dark, mutated man with gigantic wings and glowing red eyes. In addition to the sighting, those who witnessed the phenomena later experienced horrific nightmares featuring a beast with a 20-foot wingspan and red glowing eyes. They also received threatening phone calls from an unknown caller. Reports of these strange occurrences continued to increase right up until the morning of April 26th. After the disaster struck, the cryptid was again sighted in the ruins of the power plant. Cleanup workers and helicopter pilots described a large black bird-like creature with a 20-foot wingspan gliding through the swirling plumes of irradiated smoke pouring from the reactor. Strangely, the sightings before and after the disaster are practically the same, and the beast's appearance and possible foretelling of catastrophe have been likened to the famous cryptid Mothman. The most commonly accepted theory suggests that the Black Bird of Chernobyl, as it's now known, may have been the same creature spotted in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, leading up to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. And it's speculated that the appearance of the creature is an omen of disasters to come in the area in which it shows itself. There are of course skeptics who suggest the Blackbird of Chernobyl is in fact a black stork, an endangered species endemic to southern Eurasia. This theory, however, fails to explain the menacing phone calls and the disturbing nightmares. Also, the description given by the eyewitnesses does not match the physical appearance of the black stork. So with that theory pretty much debunked, do you think the Blackbird of Chernobyl and the Mothman are one and the same creature? The Strange Tale of Albert Ostman. Another prospector's tale, this one comes from the Canadian Albert Ostman, who again in 1924 claimed to have had a bizarre encounter in the woods of British Columbia. Albert was visiting the area on holiday. He was familiar with the North American wilds, and was a renowned lumberjack and woodsman who refused to believe the stories of ape men that had been reported across the region. This skepticism wouldn't continue for long, however. As Albert lay down in his sleeping bag one night, he claims to have been awoken as he was dragged along the ground, still in the bag. He lay there, presumably terrified, as what he describes as a Bigfoot dragging him across the forest for 3 hours. The beast eventually stopped, dropped him, before its family, 2 adults and 2 children. Albert claimed that the tallest of the creatures was 8 feet tall and covered in a thick layer of fur. Strangely, Albert claimed that the creatures held him captive and looked after him for a total of 6 days, until he was eventually able to escape by drugging the beasts with some snuff, a type of smokeless tobacco. According to Albert, the Bigfoots fed him sweet-tasting grass, and despite the fact that he was carrying a gun, Albert did not attempt to shoot the animals, as they had not hurt him, and he believed they were peaceful. Albert kept his tale to himself for 24 years, out of fear of being accused of being crazy, until he eventually spoke to a local newspaper, The Province, relaying his story in full to the world in 1957. Akorokaimu. The Akorokaimu is a giant octopus monster of Ainu folklore, often given human female features. The monster is said to inhabit Ochara Bay in Hokkaido, Japan, and although some descriptions are far-fetched legend, it is perfectly plausible this creature exists. The legend tells how the Akorokaimu was originally a spider goddess who was cast into the sea by the godlike Repunkamu for slaughtering too many villagers in Hokkaido, and whilst in the water transformed into a giant octopus. In its octopus form, it's described as red in colour and retains its female human appearance, although some witnesses see it simply as a giant octopus or squid. Some estimates have put its size around 120 meters in length, which is huge. The monster has not only been sighted in Japan, but also Thailand. The most credible account of an actual attack by the supposed monster was offered by John Batchelor, who in the early 1900s was an English-American missionary to the Ainu people. In his book, The Ainu and Their Folklore, he wrote about an encounter local fishermen had with the monster. Here is a passage from the book describing what happened. In the morning, we found the whole village under a cloud. 3 men, it was said, were out trying to catch swordfish, when all at once a great sea monster with large staring eyes appeared in front of them and proceeded to attack the boat. A desperate fight ensued. The monster was round in shape and emitted a dark fluid and noxious odour. The three men fled in dismay, not so much indeed for fear, they say, but on account of the dreadful smell. However that may have been, they were so scared that the next morning all three refused to get up and eat. They were lying in their beds pale and trembling. In this account, the beast had no female characteristics, but was an enormous sea creature, the likes that had never been seen before. As with all cryptids in our video today, the line between legend and reality becomes blurred. But the truth is, the Akrokaimu could be a yet unidentified species of giant squid or octopus. The Ellisburg Wildman. This is a very old sighting, perhaps even the first official documented Bigfoot sighting in America, which took place in 1818. This very first Bigfoot report was featured in the New York newspaper, the Exeter Watchman, and was written as follows. Reports say that in the vicinity of Ellisburg was seen on the 30th of August by a gentleman of unquestionable veracity, an animal resembling the wild man of the woods. It is stated that he came from the woods and then took his flight in a direction which gave a perfect view of him for some time. He is described as bending forward when running, hairy, and the heel of a foot narrow, spreading at the toes. Hundreds of persons have been in pursuit for several days, but nothing further is heard or seen of him. The frequent and positive manner in which this story comes induces us to believe it. It's brief and doesn't give away much information about the encounter, leaving much to the imagination. What was this creature witnessed in the woods all those years ago? Was it the real deal, or perhaps a chance encounter with the local wildlife? Perhaps even a bear? The Scottish Ghost Fairy. Scotland in the UK is a place steeped in history, myths and legends, perhaps the most famous being the Loch Ness Monster. However, this next clip is not a monster, but an apparition that appears to manifest in broad daylight on the banks of a Scottish river. The clip was filmed by a lady who was videoing the river in the hope of filming some otters that had been seen in the area. Take a look and focus on the left-hand side of the screen. The woman didn't notice the anomaly at the time. It was only when she played back the footage. It's worth pointing out that the apparition could be an elusive Scottish fairy, as for many years Scotland has believed in fairies, originally thought to be evil. Fairies have been part of Scottish folklore for centuries. It is said that if you fall asleep in a fairy circle, especially after sunset, you won't live to tell the tale. Fairies are also thought to be responsible for stealing away babies and leaving a changeling in its place. The most vicious of the fairies are Baoban Sith or vampire fairies, who devour their male victims and rip out their hearts. So was this mysterious figure something supernatural, or just an optical illusion? Whilst we're talking about Scotland, we thought we'd update you with the latest photographic evidence of the Loch Ness Monster. On the weekend of the 26th of August 2023, the biggest search for Nessie in over 50 years took place, in which hundreds of volunteers took part. The event was well publicised in the UK and inspired Chaya Kelly to go along, with a photograph she took on August 13th, 2018, of an unidentified large eel-like creature spinning on the surface of the legendary loch. Chia managed to capture the image before the creature disappeared and never resurfaced. At the time, she did not want to face public ridicule by making the photograph public, but after showing the image to full-time Nessie hunter Steve Feltham at the event, he was astonished and she decided to share it. Take a look.
The beauty of these latest photographs that Chi Kelly has taken is that they're here in the bay. There's 15 photographs. It lasts 2 minutes, the sequence of pictures, and there's a clear, focused image in the middle of it that I can't instantly explain.
The creature was about 200 meters from the shore, moving right to left at a steady speed. It was spinning and rolling at times, although Chia never saw a head or neck, and she could not accurately assess its length. The two parts that were visible were less than 2 meters long together. Chia was convinced it was a creature, but whether it was the elusive Loch Ness monster is still up for debate. However, Nessie enthusiasts believe it is the most exciting Nessie image to surface in years. What do you make of it? And do you believe in the Loch Ness monster? We took a trip to Loch Ness a few years back, and although we did not see it, we must admit there is a strange atmosphere when standing down by the loch. The Florida skunk ape. While Bigfoot is synonymous with the pine forests of the Pacific Northwest, it's not the only place in America it, or at least a very similar creature, has been sighted. The skunk ape is Florida's answer to Bigfoot, and eyewitness accounts describe a similar but smaller ape man. The most famous sighting comes from 2000, when a family heard banging and scratching sounds on their outdoor decking. Fearing they were being burgled, the family cautiously headed to the window to see what was going on, where they snapped this image. They initially figured that the animal in the photo was an orangutan, escaped from the local zoo. However, believers online were quick to point out that this creature resembles an orangutan in general form only, and looks nothing like the Indonesian orange great apes. While aggressive outbursts from Bigfoot are well documented, the skunk ape is said to be a kind, gentle creature. That being said, it's likely that an observer would smell the ape before they see it. Its namesake is its foul, putrid scent, smelling like a vile concoction of wet dog mixed with the spray of a skunk. The legendary monster is said to inhabit the Hockomock Swamp. The creature is described as a bipedal humanoid standing between 7 and 10 feet tall, with a foul smell and glowing red eyes. It is a fearsome creature who preys on unsuspecting visitors. The unknown species has been likened to Bigfoot, and here are just a few of the reported incidents involving the unknown beast. In 1988, 2 boys followed a pair of giant 3-toed footprints into the swamp, and to their horror were confronted by a massive bird-like creature that neither of them recognized. The giant bird was as scared of them as they were of it, and it took off, flapping its huge wings as it went. The boys ran for their lives and recounted their story to the police and their family, who concluded that they had seen a great blue heron. The children swore the creature they saw was too big to be a heron and had a human-like face. However, some believed the children, as they remembered a similar incident in 1971, when a well-respected Norton police sergeant named Thomas Downey was driving home when he came across a giant creature standing at the edge of Hockomock Swamp. According to Thomas, it resembled a bird, but stood over 6 feet tall. When it spotted him, it flew away and had a wingspan of about 8 to 12 feet in length. When other officers arrived at the scene, a few large, 3-toed footprints were spotted, similar to the ones the boys followed. Oddly enough, the sighting was at a place called Bird Hill, where the indigenous people frequently spoke of a legendary thunderbird. Their ancestors claimed the great bird lived in the swamp, and to this day, apparently still does. Just a year before the thunderbird sighting, another cryptid made its presence felt. This time it was likened to Bigfoot. Residents reported seeing a hairy 7-foot monster running through their yards, sometimes on all 4 legs. Local and state police conducted a lengthy manhunt for what they believed was a giant bear, but the creature wasn't ever spotted or captured. Then on April 8, 1970, 2 police officers were parked in a cruiser near the swamp, when suddenly the rear end of their car lifted into the air and then dropped with a loud bang. The officers quickly spun the car around and shined their spotlights on something hairy, resembling a bear, running off on 2 legs. A thorough search was ordered, but no bear or any other creature was ever found. Another incident involved a hunter who shot a large animal in the woods. The creature didn't die and was shocked when it ran and gave a half-human, half-animal cry. Later, the hunter found brown hair and blood on some leaves along the path the creature fled down. Over the years, there have been several reports of a bipedal creature entering residents' backyards and gardens. The creature has never been identified. and it and its offspring are said to still roam the swamps and forests around the Bridgewater Triangle. Eric Shipton's discoveries. Famed explorer Eric Shipton, known for conquering many of the world's most difficult mountain peaks, had his own story to tell about Bigfoot, or rather, its proposed close cousin, the Yeti. In 1951, Eric climbed Mount Everest, and while passing through the peak's Munlung Basin, 19,000 feet above sea level, he claimed to have come across a trail of 13-inch long footprints in the snow. Footprints unmistakably similar to that of a great ape. He even snapped several photos, using his pickaxe to demonstrate the gargantuan scale of the prints. Apparently the trail led for roughly a mile when they disappeared into the thick snow and rocks. Shipton was not lucky enough to actually witness the creature with his own eyes on his trip, but these strange traces of a humanoid beast in the snow have captivated the cryptozoology community for years. Just picture it, a Yeti living in the uninhabited mountain that is Everest. Bigfoot footage. In the eerie heartland of Washington state, something peculiar unfolded before the lens of a traffic camera. It was like the scene of a cryptic thriller with a dash of unexpected. The Washington State Department of Transportation played host to this peculiar occurrence when they tweeted out a series of enigmatic images captured by one of their surveillance cameras. The tweet boldly declared Sasquatch spotted, while pointing out an enigmatic figure in the bottom left corner of the frame. The silhouette, mysterious and almost ghostly, resembled a human figure striding amidst the backdrop of towering evergreen trees. However, the details were shrouded in obscurity, rendering it impossible to confirm what the figure truly was. It might have been a hulking, fur-covered enigma, or perhaps a solitary hiker donning a hooded jacket. There was also the possibility, albeit less thrilling, that it was merely a trick of the branches of a nearby tree. These mystifying photographs were taken on State Road 20 Sherman Pass, a sinuous route that navigates the Cascade Mountains in the northeastern part of Washington state. It's a spot where nature's secrets intertwine with the unexplained, and it's just about 70 kilometers south of the Canadian border in Grand Forks, British Columbia. This tweet, containing at least 2 photos, sent the curious minds into a frenzy. One image circled the figure in red, with trees casting eerie shadows on sunlit snow, devoid of any other traffic on the highway. In the second image, taken either before sunrise or after sundown, a vehicle with its lights on cruised along the highway, and the figure remained unchanged. As the enigmatic photos spread like wildfire across the internet, Twitter users chimed in with their theories and jests. Some wondered if this was a remarkably slow-moving Bigfoot, as it persisted in the same spot. But alas, the cryptid hunters came up empty-handed, and the figure remained a riddle. The world has long been intrigued by the possibility of Bigfoot's existence, with reported sightings scattered across North America's wooded landscapes each year. Washington state, along with its neighbour British Columbia, has earned a reputation as a hotspot for supposed Bigfoot encounters. Eager adventurers can join in the hunt by keeping an eye on the Washington State Department of Transportation's public traffic cameras, which snap new images every hour. The Bigfoot figure lingered on the SR-20 Sherman Pass camera for a whopping 48 hours, but as of today, its whereabouts remain a mystery. If you're in the area, keep your wits about you, for who knows what lurks in those shadowy woods. The Livonian Werewolf. Thies of Kaltenbrunn, commonly referred to as the Livonian Werewolf, was an elderly Livonian man who was arrested in 1692 for heresy. At his trial, Thies shocked the judge by openly declaring himself to be a werewolf, claiming that he ventured into hell with other werewolves in order to do battle with the devil and his witches. He claimed that on the nights of St. Lucia's Day, Pentecost and St. John's Day, he and the other werewolves transformed from their human bodies into wolves. Thies explained he had first become a werewolf when he was a beggar on the streets of Sweden, where he met a man who drank a toast to him and gave him the ability to transform into a wolf. He He said he could then pass on his ability to transform into a wolf to someone else by toasting them, breathing into the jug 3 times and proclaiming, "You will become like me." Thies stated that he and the other werewolves wandered around local farms and ripped apart any farm animals they came across, before roasting the meat and devouring it. And they all travelled to a place that was located beyond the sea, where they entered into hell. There they met the devil and battled with him and his loyal malevolent witches, beating them with long iron rods and chasing them like dogs. However, he claimed that he was a hound of God, and he was a werewolf for the good of Christianity, not against it. The judge disagreed and deemed him guilty of trying to turn people away from Christianity, and he was sentenced to be both flogged and banished for life. Bigfoot sighting in San Gabriel, California, 2020. In 2020, a hiker in the San Gabriel wilderness in California pulled out his camera to record the stunning landscape, but as he pans around, he spots something in the trees below and zooms in. The large creature appears to be about 10 to 15 feet, although strangely it doesn't appear to move. The area is not usually known for Bigfoot sightings. However, in 2018, a woman walking in San Bernardino Mountains, located about 70 miles east of San Gabriel, claims she also spotted a Sasquatch up in a tree. Here she is speaking about her experience.
My daughters were about 10, 20 feet behind me, and as I turn around, I'm looking straight, and I see the creature on that tree. So what I do is I continue walking closer to try to tell myself, am I seeing a shadow, a tree stump? At that point, I see his head turn, so I know that I'm not looking at a shadow. And this is where I stop, and this is where everything pretty much happened. This is where my daughter videotaped from your angle.
I swear to God, Mom? Yeah. Yeah.
The Rake Beyond the Pines. The final video we'll be taking a look at was uploaded to TikTok in early summer 2023 by the motocross enthusiast account MotoWens. At first, the video starts out with nothing more than the rider taking his dirt bike down a long trail into the heart of the woods. He makes a comment about how the trail goes on forever, but continues descending further into the thick forests. It isn't until after 30 seconds or so of riding does the footage take a wicked turn. After stopping at a break in the trail, the camera turns towards the right, where a small white figure can be seen emerging from behind the shrub. The rider wastes no time in turning around, ready to leave whatever cursed corner of the woods he stumbled into. There's just one problem. The rider's dirt bike won't start. As his breath becomes heavier, the tension ratchets up, as one can feel the white figure getting closer. The rider kicks and kicks until his bike roars to life and he can head back in the direction he came from. Even if the video is faked, you can hear the fear in his voice when he says that was a sign for him to leave. Take a look.
It just got really quiet really fast. That was my cue to leave.
So what could this white figure be? Obviously the woods are notorious for playing host to bizarre and cryptic creatures. Some believe, including the rider, that he found a skinwalker in between its animal and human form. Others aren't so sure though, and actually think the rider rode right up to a secret hiding spot for a creature called the Rake. The Rake is a chilling supernatural entity that gained notoriety through internet folklore and creepypasta stories. We talked about it many years ago. Described as a humanoid creature with unsettling pale skin and elongated limbs, the Rake is known for its ability to instill intense fear in those who encounter it. Legends surrounding the Rake often depict it as a nocturnal stalker, silently appearing at the edge of one's vision before vanishing just as mysteriously. witnesses recount disturbing experiences of feeling a profound sense of dread and helplessness in the creature's presence. The rake has become a symbol of terror in online horror communities, with stories and alleged sightings contributing to its enduring legacy as a modern urban legend. The reincarnated werewolf of Ainsbach. In 1685, a wolf began attacking livestock in the Bavarian town of Ainsbach. Before long, the beast moved on to humans and killed several children within a few months. The terrified villager believed this was no ordinary wolf, but rather a werewolf they claimed was the reincarnation of Michael Light, the detested former burgomaster of Ainsbach who had recently passed away. They believed he had escaped eternal death by transforming his spirit into the body of a wolf. The locals were determined to hunt down the wolf to protect their children and free the town from the spirit of the hated burgomaster. They prepared a wolf pit with stone walls about 3 or 4 meters deep and covered with branches. They placed a dead rooster at the bottom of the pit to lure the beast. After several hours, the wolf fell into the hole and was killed by hunters. However, that was not the end of the story. The animal carcass was paraded through the streets to show the danger was over. But since this was no ordinary wolf but a werewolf, what they did next was truly grotesque. After skinning the animal, the men severed its muzzle and placed on its head a mask with Light's features. They then dressed it in a wig and a cloak and hung the wolf on a gibbet erected on a nearby hill. The ritual had a double purpose. By depriving the wolf of its fur and replacing it with human clothes, showed Satan that his trick did not work, and that the townspeople could recognize the man concealed in the body of the beast. It also served as the post-execution of the former ruler, who the people failed to overthrow in life, and to send a grim warning to the new burgomaster not to make the same mistake as the old one. A mother and child. Time for a more recent sighting. This video footage was recorded by a man going by the name Eddie V, who submitted his finding to the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization in 2021. The actual footage comes from Eddie's cousin, who was kayaking down a stretch of the Cass River in Michigan. In the short clip, a large humanoid figure, seemingly covered in a layer of light brown fur, can be seen carrying what appears to be an infant, which looks very similar to the mother creature. The footage was filmed from a safe distance, and as is the case with many alleged Bigfoot videos, is quite blurry. Still, a figure matching the description of Bigfoot can clearly be seen crossing the river with a baby in its arms. Take a look. The Beast of Bladenboro. On the night of December 31st, 1953, just as the residents of the North Carolina town of Bladenboro were preparing to bring in the new year, a local man by the name of Johnny Vorse encountered something truly disturbing. Late at night, Johnny was awoken by a sound around the back of the house and went to go and check on his 2 dogs. To his shock and dismay, both of his beloved hounds had been killed by an unknown assailant, torn to shreds near their kennels. A grisly duo of deaths that only a large animal could cause. Across the course of the next few days, the attacks would continue, seemingly made by the same creature. Across the first week of 1954, 6 dogs, a pet rabbit, and even a goat were killed. All of the carcasses were discovered in terrible states. Bones were crushed, flesh was torn, and blood spilled everywhere. What could have caused this? The animal may have been spotted a few days before the first death. In fact, on the 29th of December 1953, a dog was found killed in a similar manner to those that met their end in Bladenboro, and the assailant was seen running away from the attack as it happened. The animal that killed the dog was said to be 5 feet long, jet black and sleek. Other eyewitness reports in Bladenboro would describe it as much smaller with bushy fur, almost like a small bear. In some circumstances, it was even seen with what was presumed to be a baby alongside it. Some reported to hear a noise like a crying baby just before the dogs were killed. presumed to have been produced by the attacking animal, but it was only ever seen in passing glimpses. Most of the witness reports tended to describe the animal as cat-like. In some cases, it was supposedly similar to a bobcat. In others, it was more like a large mountain lion. These reports were inconsistent and did little to help the residents understand what had killed their dogs. The hunt for the animal began on the night of January 3rd, when Roy Fors, the chief of police in Bladenboro, took his dog out to search for the attacker. Alarmingly, the dogs refused to follow the scent and acted fearful when Roy tried to encourage them. Over the course of the next few days, over 800 people took to the woods and swamps looking for the animal that had terrorized the town, who were joined by another 800 on January 7th. These hunting parties were unsuccessful. The only potential success of these hunts came from a man named Luther Davis, who on the 13th of January trapped and shot a bobcat. When he contacted the papers, however, he was met with skepticism that an animal of relatively small stature could have inflicted such wounds on the dogs that were killed. To this day, no single species has been narrowed down and named for the attacks. The nature of the wounds and the reported size of the animal would lead many to believe that a bear or mountain lion were responsible, but some have considered coyotes or even pantherine cats, such as leopards and jaguars, that had possibly escaped from private collections or zoos. Others believe it was some kind of mythical creature. It's a strange tale, and one that still needs explaining. The Yowie of Jimna. It's not just America that has its fair share of Bigfoot sightings. The Australian term for unknown humanoid creatures with thick fur is Yowie, and one was sighted not too long ago in December 2021 in Jimna, a rural Queensland town. Seamus Fitzgerald and his two friends from work were driving back from their shift when they spotted a humanoid figure slouching over on its hind legs underneath a streetlight. Initially, the friends thought that the creature was a boar or another large animal, but as they got closer, the classic Bigfoot form emerged, and the creature sprinted off human-like on its two hind legs. The three friends were startled and found it very difficult to get to sleep after what they had seen that night. The trio returned to the same area for a series of hikes over the coming weeks to try and catch a glimpse of the strange creature once again, but to no avail. To this day, they have no idea what they saw. Real or fake? In 2013, 3 Russian school children claimed to have filmed a Yeti in the trees in the Kemerovo region of southern Siberia. The blurred footage taken on one of the boys' mobile phones shows them following giant footprints in the snow. As they get closer to the bushes, they see a figure about 50 meters in front of them. Take a look. It appeared to notice them as well, and moved sharply before running off. The boys, who appeared shocked, ran in the opposite direction. Experts reviewed the footage and believed it was genuine. However, whether the figure was a Yeti or there was a more plausible explanation has never been confirmed. Bigfoot UK. Bigfoot is usually associated with rural mountainous areas in America. However, there have been several lesser-known sightings in the United Kingdom, and in 2021, Bigfoot enthusiast Lee Brickley says he found tracks and claw marks that prove an ape-like beast is living in the forests of Britain. He found the prints in Cannock Chase, Staffordshire, a 26 square mile forest that for centuries has been plagued with paranormal activity and supernatural phenomena, from child spirits to UFOs and werewolves, as well as sightings of a Yeti-like creature dating back to the 1800s. Take a look at the photos Lee took of the prints. Lee claims they measured a terrifying 41 centimeters from toe to heel, nearly twice the size of an average male footprint, and far too large to be from any animal native to the UK. About a month after spotting the footprints, Lee found huge claw marks on a tree in the same area. He said close by was a mutilated deer that was covered in bite marks and had its throat ripped out. Take a look at the claw marks. Reports of these sightings seem to have drastically increased in number since the beginning of 2019, with many believing there is some unknown creature roaming the forest of Cannock Chase. Perhaps we'll have to take a trip down and see for ourselves. War Cemetery Werewolf. In 2009, a supernatural survey revealed 20 werewolf sightings have been reported at Cannock Chase, the famous paranormal hotspot in England. The report was put together by lead paranormal researcher Lionel Fanthorpe, who studied police reports and archives of groups who explored ghostly and unexplained events to collate the sightings. It showed that in 1975, a paranormal group encountered a snarling beast in the woods. It reared up on its hind legs and ran off into the bushes. A similar sighting was reported in 2007, when a West Midlands ghost club had been called in to investigate claims from people who'd seen a werewolf-type creature prowling around the chase. The wolf was seen walking upright in the German War Cemetery on Camp Road. The credible eyewitness accounts came from a local scoutmaster and a postman, who claimed they'd come face to face with the werewolf. At first, they thought it was a large dog, until it raised up on its haunches, revealing its full height was over 7 foot. A month after this sighting, a story was printed in a local paper claiming the werewolf could actually be a subterranean Stone Age throwback that could have lived for centuries in the old mines under Cannock Chase, only surfacing when they needed to eat. This could also explain the disappearance of a number of domestic pets that have gone missing over the years in the area around the war cemetery. As we have mentioned before on this channel, Cannock Chase is a hotspot for all things paranormal, and adding a werewolf into the mix seems quite plausible, seeing as it's considered to be the most haunted location in the UK. Mysterious Idaho footage. This next piece of footage was captured in Idaho at the end of 2021, which was uploaded by YouTube user NVTV. The footage is unusually clear, showing a close-up encounter with what appears to be Bigfoot. The uploader of the video has commented on the level of detail captured in the body and fur of the creature in the footage, and the fact that its hulking, monstrous size denotes an animal that simply can't be a man in a suit, in their words. The footage really is striking, as it's unusual to see an alleged Bigfoot so close to the camera. The figure really fills the screen, and you can get a good impression of the beast's size from the width of his body and shoulders. The Yucca Man. This video went viral in August of 2016, and it was claimed that the footage was shot in a desert-like wasteland somewhere in Portugal. And the voices that are heard in the clip are definitely speaking in Portuguese. It has subsequently been claimed that the video was recorded in the Navajo Nation sometime in 2007. The short piece of footage shows some sort of bizarre creature slowly plodding along through the barren landscape. The unknown beast looks to be very tall and is walking upright on 2 feet with a stooped posture. It has very long arms but looks humanoid in appearance, ambling along until it disappears behind a bush. Take a look.
Caralho, velho. Puta, onde que tá agora, pô? Olha lá, olha lá.
Many explanations as to what the mysterious creature could be have been suggested, including Bigfoot, Yeti, Chupacabra, alien, or some sort of fantastic hybrid of one or more cryptids. Tales of large, hairy, ape-like creatures exist throughout the world. Stories about the Yeti have been around for centuries, and the creature in the video does look similar to the description given of the Yeti and Bigfoot. There have been consistent sightings of these supersized beasts. Evidence of the Yeti has been found in the Himalayas, the inhospitable Asian mountain range that has some of the world's largest peaks. Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, as it is commonly referred to, is said to inhabit the densely forested areas of North America. Neither of these environments is like the terrain seen in the video, but the Joshua Tree National Park in South California where the Mojave and Colorado deserts meet, is very similar in appearance, and it's there where there have been sightings of another large ape-like animal that has become known as the Yucca Man. Described by one witness, who happened to be a Marine, as being extremely hairy and at least 12 feet tall, and then by a couple who saw the beast in 1979 and said it was covered in long tan hair and was as large as a refrigerator with arms, hanging down below its knees. The Freiburg Shrieker. On September 10, 1978, workers at a mine close to the city of Freiburg in the state of Baden-Württemberg, Germany, experienced a very strange event. As they approached the entrance of the mine to start their day's work, they noticed a man they did not recognize. He appeared to be dressed in a dark leather trench coat and seemed to be guarding the mine entrance. As the men got closer, a couple of them walked ahead towards the individual to see what he wanted. However, when they got within a few feet of him, what they thought was a coat flung open and formed a pair of huge outstretched wings attached to a humanoid body. The creature prevented the men from entering the mine, and confronted with the unknown, they didn't try to get past. Instead, the terrified workers stood back and busied themselves with work on the ground in the hope the creature would move away. After waiting for what seemed like hours, the miners felt the ground shake, followed by an explosion deep within the mine. The men rushed to the mine entrance to discover the winged creature was gone, and a huge plume of smoke and flame bellowed from the entrance of the mine. When the smoke and flames died down, and officials were able to examine the mine, it was determined that all 36 miners, should they had been at their designated posts, would have been killed. This has led some investigators to suggest that the Freiburg Shrieker, as he became known, appeared that day to prevent the men from entering the mine, and in the process, saved their lives. The same foreboding theory linked to both the Mothman of Point Pleasant and the Blackbird of Chernobyl, who were also sighted just before disaster struck. Could they be the same entity and an omen to impending doom? A postscript to the story states that 6 months after the incident, most of the miners lost their jobs due to serious mental health disorders. 2 of the workers who did remain employed dedicated their lives to revealing the truth behind what happened that day and sharing their findings with the world. However, both of them have died unusually young and extremely impoverished. To this day, the stories of the Freiburg Shrieker, the Mothman, and the Blackbird of Chernobyl remain shrouded in mystery. US wildlife experts are baffled by a wolf-like animal that was killed by a Montana farmer. In 2018, a mysterious wolf-like creature was shot dead in the US. It baffled wildlife experts who had no idea what it was. The animal was killed by a farmer after he spotted it, worrying his livestock, in Denton, Montana. Soon theories circulated online, suggesting anything from a young grizzly bear, a coyote hybrid, or proof that werewolves exist. Experts confirmed it was a member of the dog family that includes dogs, foxes, coyotes, and wolves, although it didn't have traditional wolf features because its teeth were too short and claws too large, and there was something off about it. To this day, it's still not confirmed, so could it be the elusive werewolf, or just a wolf-dog hybrid bred in captivity and released into the wild? What do you think? Bigfoot caught on camera. Britain is not very well known for Bigfoot sightings, so when a photo started circulating in 2017 that purportedly showed a large, hairy, human-like creature in a forest in Northern Ireland, it made the national newspapers. Maxine Caulfield was walking her dog in an area known as Slievenora in County Antrim, Northern Ireland, when her pet suddenly stopped and seemed to sense something or someone in the forest. The area is known for its eerie feeling ever since a tragic plane crash there in 1942, when a US Air Force B-17 Flying Fortress bomber crashed into a nearby mountain, killing 8 of the 10 people on board. Maxine couldn't see anything, but used her camera phone to take some snaps of the area. It wasn't until she got home that she spotted what looked like a creature lurking in the woods. Is that a British Bigfoot, or as some are saying, is a case of pareidolia, and what can actually be seen is tree stumps covered in snow? It's easy to see at first glance that it does look like the familiar stance of the infamous Bigfoot. So what do you think? Did Maxine's dog sense something strange in the woods? And is this photographic evidence of a creature living in the woods? There was another Bigfoot sighting in 2015 by another dog walker in Sussex. Caroline Toms took this image of what she believed was a huge ape-like beast running across a path whilst she was out walking her dog. Mike Woolley's encounter. In the December of 1981, hunter Mike Woolley was on the lookout for deer in the Louisiana woods, not too far from the town of Keechee. As he waited in his deer stand, he could hear noises emerging from the bushes. A deer bolted out of the greenery, which Mike claims was acting like it was being chased by a predator. A number of creatures are local to the region that could have been chasing the deer, bears, coyotes and alligators for example. But what Mike saw was completely unexpected. Crashing through the undergrowth, a huge human-like figure, 8 feet tall and covered in thick black hair, caught sight of Mike and started towards him. Before doing so, it let out a roar, to which a second creature emerged from the bushes, letting out a series of grunts and whistles. Mike instantly fled, pausing to occasionally see if he was being followed. At first the creatures actively pursued him, but when he fired a warning shot, the pair seemed to back down. This gave Mike the opportunity to unlock his truck and speed out of the forest as quickly as he could. What did he see that day? The Teke Teke. The Teke Teke is the terrifying tale of a Japanese girl who fell onto a railway line and was cut in two, and whose vengeful spirit lurks in train stations and urban streets, preying on unsuspecting passers-by. Due to horrific injuries, Teke Teke has no lower body and travels along on her hands carrying a razor-sharp scythe. She is often portrayed as having long black hair and claws instead of fingernails that help her drag her mutilated body around. The young woman earned the nickname Teke Teke because that is the sound she makes as she moves along the concrete paths. She is widely believed to be the spirit of a woman named Kashima Raiko. According to legend, at the end of World War II, Kashima worked in an office, and as she walked home one evening, she was assaulted by military personnel who left her badly injured on the railway line. As she struggled to get to safety, she was hit by a train and cut in half. However, she was not instantly killed, and it was so cold that night that her blood vessels contracted and prevented her from bleeding to death. Instead, she writhed around in pain on the track until she was spotted by an attendant, but instead of trying to help her, he covered her in a plastic bag and left her to die a slow, agonizing death. It is said that if you encounter Kashima in a public bathroom, she will ask if you know where her legs are, and if the reply you give is not acceptable to her, she will take revenge and cut your legs off with her scythe. The only way to appease her spirit is to tell her that her legs are on the Machine Expressway, or say the phrase Kamen Shinemai. These answers will supposedly spare your life. Although if you encounter Teke Teke in the suburbs or in the train station, she will chase you and cut your body in half, mimicking her own horrific death and disfigurement. This is one to remember if you ever find yourself visiting the Japanese suburbs or subways. Werewolf remains. Finishing up this list, we'll take a look at the werewolf remains found in Lincolnshire. In the middle 1800s, a young archaeologist who lived in Langrick Fen, not far from Dogdyke, was digging in the peat and discovered some ancient remains. Among them was what looked like a human skeleton with a wolf's head. The man took the remains back to his cottage and placed them on his kitchen table to examine them, but was baffled and eventually concluded that it must be some put-together monstrosity, possibly used at a fair to excite the interest of the crowd. That night, however, he found himself very restless and unable to sleep, and thought he heard a noise out in the back garden. He got up tentatively and went to investigate, when suddenly he heard a loud tap on the window. As he looked through the pane, he could see a dark figure looking at him in the form of a human with a wolf's head. As the young man stood frozen with horror, The creature snarled and raised its arms and smashed the glass. The man quickly fled to the kitchen, locking the door and barricading himself in with furniture. He stayed there all night. As the morning light started to stream through, the man decided to venture out of his makeshift barricade and open the door. He could see no sign of the creature. However, the table where he had placed the remains he found the previous day was overturned, and the window shards covered the floor. He quickly gathered up the remains and took them back to where he found them and reburied them. The man was never bothered again by the Wolfman and never dared to revisit his grave. I think it's time to go. In 2015, a mushroom hunter got more than he bargained for whilst foraging in a mushroom forest in northern Illinois. Take a look at this footage he uploaded to his YouTube channel, Tomorrow's Garden.
This one looks like it has a bite out of it. And this one. And there's one over here. Looks like it's holding some water. Huh? I think it's time to go.
It all seems pretty legit, although someone pointed out at the time it sounded like it came from a movie. We're unsure on this one, although the mushroom hunter did do a follow-up video 6 years later, but this time nothing was heard. Painted rock. Although the term Bigfoot wasn't coined until much later, sightings of large hairy ape men have persisted across North America long before the arrival of European settlers. California is famously a Bigfoot hotspot, and the native Yokot people have their own stories to tell about the mysterious cryptid. Petroglyphs at a site known as Painted Rock on the Tule River Reservation seem to depict several towering, hairy humanoid figures. The native people referred to the largest of the figures as Hairy Man, and are estimated to have been carved over 500 years ago. When European settlers did begin to colonize North America in the 16th century, Spanish explorers would tell tales of dark watchers, tall, hairy figures that would loom from the trees in the night, silently watching their campsites. The Bigfoot legend is one that has persisted for many, many years. Terrifying werewolf caught on camera. This next clip is fairly recent. It was uploaded to TikTok by user Bigfoot Anonymous and seems to show a mysterious figure running across a back garden. We don't know a whole lot about it, but the large entity appears to have shaggy hair and runs on all fours. Take a look. Commenters have said it looks like some sort of canine, and many believe it's either a werewolf or Bigfoot. It is not known where the video was captured, and we'll leave it up to you to decide what you think it is. Jonestown, Pennsylvania print. Throughout the years, the state of Pennsylvania has had a slew of intriguing Sasquatch encounters, with the first dating back to 1858, when there was a series of wild man sightings that put fear into the locals. Described as a hairy man that walked upright, the creature terrorized livestock and residents alike. However, perhaps the most convincing evidence that there was an unknown creature in the area occurred in August 1980, when locals in the Conemaugh Township area of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, discovered a massive print in the mud that appeared to belong to somebody or something's right foot. It had 6 toes and must have had a giant stride, as the second imprint of the left foot was found 8 feet away from the right. The print was found close to someone's home and was said to measure over 17 inches. Reports of a repugnant odour in the area were also reported, as well as bizarre noises like nothing they had heard before. The incident made the newspapers, and to this day has neither been solved or debunked. The Werewolf of Bedburg. In October 1589, a baying crowd gathered in the German city of Bedburg. They were there to witness the execution of Peter Stump, a 50-year-old farmer who confessed to making a pact with the devil to gain the ability to turn into a werewolf. Stump had committed multiple murders and cannibalism. He killed 13 children, including his own son, and 3 adults, and allegedly after killing his son, he ate his brain. Stump claimed he transformed into a wolf by wearing a wolfskin belt, given to him by the devil. By removing the belt, he could return back to his human form. After the murders and livestock deaths, villagers formed patrols to hunt down the perpetrator, and Stump was spotted in his wolf form and chased. It's claimed when they caught up with him, he removed his magic belt and reverted back to human in full view of his pursuers. However, once the mob confirmed who he really was, he was arrested. Stump confessed to the crimes, although he was likely under great duress to do so. He was later condemned to death. His execution was brutal. He was strapped to a wheel and skinned alive. His bones were broken, he was decapitated, and then his body was burned at the stake. As a warning to everyone, his head was later impaled on a post in the center of the village.
The Mammoth Cave Incident. This story comes out of Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, where 2 university students, Brad Ginn and Madeline Durand, were woken up from their camping trip to the area by loud voices and the firing of guns. A man had run into the cave, his son in tow, brandishing a loaded gun, and was firing into the darkness at what he claimed was Bigfoot. As the man ran in, the students heard him shouting, "Oh my God, did you see that? There it is." The couple ran out to the cave to confront the man, who explained to them that he had seen a large, hairy humanoid enter the cave near to where the couple was sleeping. What happened next is unclear, but police attended the incident at the cave at around 2 a.m. and no injuries were reported, but a spokesperson reiterated the fact that no weapons are allowed in the area. Jacob's Bigfoot. We featured this one before, but it's so strange we thought we'd feature it again for those who haven't seen it. In 2007, Bigfoot enthusiasts went wild when Rick Jacobs captured 2 images of what people believe is a young Bigfoot roaming the Allegheny National Forest in northwest Pennsylvania. Rick was using a Bushnell trial camera attached to a tree to track deer in the woods, ready for the fall deer hunt. However, when he looked through the footage, he noticed something unusual. At first you can see bear cubs walking past the camera, and one appears to be sniffing the deer bait and mineral block put down by Rick. Then, shortly after, the unidentified animal can be seen walking past in 2 shots. The camera has around a 30-second delay per photo, so the camera only managed to take 2 photographs of the creature. It's believed by many to be nothing more than a bear with a skin disease, whilst others believe it is some sort of primate and very unlikely to be a bear, even though there is no primates roaming the woods in northwest Pennsylvania. The other explanation is it's a juvenile Bigfoot. A recent Bigfoot audio recording. This video was published by NVTV Bigfoot just a few weeks ago in June of 2022. The user claims that they left their camera running unattended in the woods of Georgia to see what they would capture, and this is what they heard. It's a relatively long clip, but the sounds of rustling foliage and the occasional whoop or screech can be heard behind the tree line. The Ukrainian Yeti. This next footage was filmed in a remote forest in Ukraine, believed to be in Yalta, on the Crimean Peninsula, and it supposedly shows the elusive Yeti walking through the forest. Similar to Bigfoot, the Yeti is an ape-like creature, but unlike its western counterpart Bigfoot, is more likely to inhabit the colder regions of the world, sometimes referred to as the abominable snowman. It has been spotted in the Himalayas, Russia, northern India, and Ukraine. Over the years, many disputed sightings, video recordings, and photographs have been shown to try and prove the existence of the bipedal creature. This footage is over 10 years old and shows a terrified Ukrainian man filming the beast from behind a tree. Take a look.
Серега, что это?
The guy filming seems genuinely terrified, and if that is fake acting, it's damn good. So is this a genuine Yeti sighting, or just another prankster dressed in a fursuit? The Eagle webcam. In October of 2016, viewers on the Carbon TV Eagle Cam, a live webcam set up for viewers to observe bald eagles returning to their nests in real time, witnessed something out of the ordinary pass by underneath the nest. 30 meters below, at ground level, in the top right of the screen, a human-like figure passes by below the camera. Dark and featureless, it's likely that this could have been a hoax, but the viewers of the camera seem to think otherwise. The Pukwudgie is another creature from American lore that is said to inhabit Freetown State Forest. It is described as a small grey skinned humanoid with big ears that can be both helpful and spiteful depending on its mood. In Wampanoag legend, the Pukwudgie is thought to be a guardian of the forest. Many people have claimed to have had encounters with the creature while hiking or camping, and its footprints have been seen on numerous occasions. Bigfoot on a security camera. This video was uploaded to YouTube by the account Mr. Man on the 12th of February 2022. The uploader has stated in the description that this footage was shot on a security camera, but you can clearly make out the eerie subject standing with its back to the camera in the centre of the screen. A large muscular figure matching the classic description of Bigfoot stands swaying in the nighttime air before it begins to saunter around the property. It appears incredibly muscular and powerful, much bulkier and bigger than a human. The Hickory Bigfoot sighting. In August 2019, Hickory resident and Bigfoot hunter Doug Teague filmed what he claims was one of the clearest videos of a North Carolina Bigfoot ever seen. Doug was walking his dog Crazy Daisy through woods just outside of the city. He was checking some trail cams when he heard a loud knocking sound in the distance. As he got closer, he spotted an unrecognizable creature on top of a ridge and started to record it. He then followed the huge creature's footprints and took casts of them. Take a look.
He's still up here. Or something's up here. He's moving. He's moving, he's moving, he's moving. Daisy, come here. Daisy, come here. I want to do a quick little video here. Me and Crazy Daisy has followed these tracks. This is the best one of them. I'm going to try to cast it. Stepped on a limb. And it goes. Let's see. Here's one. Right here. Let's see. So another one. Right here. You can see a little bit where he smashed. See the toes.
Doug claims as he approached the creature, it started throwing stones at him, not something a bear or any other animal would do. Later, the footprint casts were looked at by an anthropologist, who thought that the prints belonged to a creature around 15 foot tall. Other experts agreed the footprints looked genuine. So what do you think Doug saw? Could it really be a Bigfoot, or just another elaborate hoax? Something's at the window. This is an incredibly creepy one. A series of images were published by Scott Yeoman in his Bailey, Colorado home, which appeared to depict a large, hairy, human-like face appearing at his window. Scott heard a series of strange noises from outside his building, and when he went to investigate, this is what he saw. At first he assumed the figure was a bear, but when he caught a glimpse of its face, he knew that couldn't be the case. Scott ran for his gun in case the creature tried to break in, but when he had returned to the window, it was nowhere to be seen. What do you think these pictures show? And what would you have done if you were in Scott's position?